they're going to know what tests, they're going to know more about what to do about your bleeding than,
Yeah. And
yeah.
find out if they're a menopause specialist, because I hear stories from Canada from my friends and some of the things that the doctors that they're seeing are saying. And it's like, what? What are you
Yeah.
talking about? Like, I don't
You're
even
too
know.
young, like,
Yeah. And testing for perimenopause.
yeah.
I don't know. Did you see that there's a lawsuit against the makers of that clear blue test, which I feel is so funny. It's like two women just sued this company because I don't know, they basically say you don't need that test. You can't tell if, I thought that test, I wrote about that test when it came out because my argument was like, you don't really need a test for menopause. As many specialists pointed out at the time, you
What's
don't have your
funny
period
is,
for 12
yeah.
months and then you're in menopause, and it's on FSH levels, which I'm not sure about the science on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think once they start going up, something's going on, but they fluctuate so much. But the thing I used to talk about a lot, and I don't anymore, because the only FDA approved test for menopause that I found this early on, is the anti-Murulin. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Mullerian or yeah, I don't know.
Murlurian.
It's got an umlaut in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that test is really good especially if you're younger, because the follicles secrete that hormone. So if it helps you, like, how many eggs do you have left? That's kind of what. So I actually had that test when I was 39 and trying to get pregnant, and it was good. It showed that I had some eggs. So yeah, like, but it's supposed to predict menopause. And so, like, if a woman is 43 and having heavy bleeding, it'd probably be nice to know, like, do I have 10 years of this, or do I have 5 years of this?
Yeah.
It's called MenoCheck. I don't know. There's a website, but no one talks about this test, and I never hear anyone getting the test. So I don't know. I think it would.
Sorry to interrupt. The only one I've heard of talking about AMH, I never heard of that test, I think it was Boston. Like, there was this big push to look at that specific aspect. And this is what's frustrating about the coverage of menopause too, because it's just not continuous. So there'll be a big article about something, and then you just like can't find anything else about it. Like there was another a company working on this old psychedelic for menopause. This was when I first started out, and I can't find anything about it. I guess it didn't work out, right? Like, I guess it just went away. Something.
Yeah, I mean, I like, it's weird what gets attention and what doesn't, and I can't figure out, like, am I the only one that cares about AMH?
Sometimes it feels like that, right? Like,
yeah.
and we're both kind of obsessive people, so I'll be going for a walk, like, just thinking and thinking and thinking about something, and I'm like, no one else is thinking about this. Like,
Yeah,
there's no one else. You are.
I know. I'm like, doesn't anyone care about homocysteine? I do.
Okay, yeah. That's why we said we wanted to do this, because, like, we're two people that care. We just need someone to talk to.
I know. I'm like, my readers probably hate me, but I'm going to talk about nitric oxide one more time.
Oh, nitric oxide. Okay, so let's talk about the thing that I ordered. I don't even remember. This was so long ago that I ordered from your newsletter. It looks like a job strap for it. It looks like a women's anatomy interior.
Yeah, it looks like a cup thing for bleeding.
Yeah, or also, like, if you put it like this, doesn't it kind of look like our uterus and a really thick? Anyway, what is this, Maryann, again?
It's Expandalon. It's a inspiratory and expiratory resistance training. I don't know what you call it, device.
Okay. And why?
So the studies on women and men, it's more preliminary, but it shows that when you do intense breathing, and it's only 5 minutes a day, so you strengthen, like, so these muscles get weak with time, and then menopause makes it worse. Our diaphragm muscles and our intercostal muscles. So these are kind of like hidden muscles, and by creating resistance, and I think the studies, it's like 75% resistance. You do 30 breaths a day, and you separate it out. So you do 5-6 times, or you could do 6-5 times, whatever. And you take a minute break in between. So let me see if I can.
Can I just ask you, there's a little nozzle here. Do I tighten it up? Or
so the left, if you move it to the left, it creates resistance. So you can put it in your mouth.
Uh-huh.
So keep moving it to the left until you feel like, you can do
Mm-hmm.
about 5 or 6 breaths. And kind of like, focus on your diaphragm. Breathe in and out.
This is riveting for people to watch. We're definitely going to get a television deal if we do more content like this. Well, I feel
Yeah.
a little bit lightheaded. Maybe I had it all the way. Maybe I should do it less.
Yeah, I would, since you're just starting, don't worry about like 75%. Just get used to it.
Okay.
And and do 30 breaths. And then as you go, like you feel comfortable, and
am I doing it right? Like, is there any tips for down here?
I would just like stand up, like good posture. And just count. I do it more fat like.
Okay, so it's not like a huge long in and a huge long out. Just normal breathing. Be normal.
Yeah.
Be normal, but breathe through this.
Yeah.
Okay. So 3 times a day, 5 or 6 each time.
Yeah, so you do 5 or 6, 30 breaths. And you take a breath, a break in between, because usually by the time I do like 6, I feel it, and I take about a minute break. So it ends up taking about 5 minutes. You can do it like while you're sitting, writing or cooking dinner. Or sometimes I even do it in the car.
So wait, 5 or 6, 3 rounds, so 30, and then you do that a couple times a day?
You just do it once a day, 5 to 7 times a week.
Okay.
So you can 6 breaths 5 times, 1 minute in between. Yeah.
And what has this got to do with nitric oxide?
So nitric oxide decreases when inflammation and oxidative stress go up. And so the studies show that when you do this, you become more efficient at breathing. And it's really subtle, but like your diaphragm is stronger, so you're not breathing as heavy, and it decreases CRP, like in the studies that have been done, and it decreases blood pressure. So it just decreases inflammation. So breathing is when our breathing starts to get not as strong as we get older, it's like a hidden source of inflammation that people just don't even realize. That's why I think it's just so interesting. And in this first study they did in 2021, postmenopausal women had a really great response. And so Daniel Craighead, I've interviewed him. They're doing a study right now comparing exercise to the high resistance, just 5 minutes a day, and comparing the two, because postmenopausal women, sometimes we don't respond to like aerobic exercise as well as we used to, or as men, age matched men, decreases in estrogen. And so the breathing is really, it's just like a hidden muscle that you need to, just like we work our other muscles, these muscles are just, we don't think about it. And one thing that's really interesting is also reflex. Sometimes can happen when our diaphragm is weak, because part of our diaphragm is responsible for keeping, like, tightening that area that keeps the food in your stomach.
Yeah.
And so I've seen some good studies with, strengthening your breathing and your diaphragm and reflux. And women have, in their 40s and 50s have a higher risk of reflux. So I don't know. It's just a really easy thing you can do, add to your day. The Smart Breathe that they use in the studies, I've been wanting to get one, but it's like $400 or $500. You can get, but it actually will show, like, you could see the resistance and your progress and stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is just like
the
a
analog
good way to, yeah. But athletes have been using this for these breathing exercises for years, because it helps them, like, with their, runners and, endurance, because it strengthens those breathing muscles, so they become a lot more efficient at using oxygen during exercise.
It's like strengthening your pelvic floor.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
Much the similar, like, it's the same principle. I'm doing now HIIT exercises for my face, which cracks me up, because I'm really obsessed with this proliferation of all these facial massaging and HIIT, and the idea that you can strengthen these muscles and lift your face. And I mean, some of them, my face is very tired after, and I kind of feel like, that just like little tiny workout. Like maybe I went up a flight of stairs,
Is it
but
the same as yoga? Face yoga?
yoga,
Face yoga. Is it the
face
same?
yoga. Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, I started last summer with this thing called face plasty, and it's this osteopath in Dubai, and he's very handsome and young, and he's got very captivating videos, and I got sort of really interested in what he was saying. And I did at first, I thought maybe it was AI, but I think he's just translating because he's from Russia, I think, or somewhere around there.
Mhm.
So I signed up to his face plasty group, and so quite diligently I was doing the facial massage by these Russian women, and Russian women have amazing skin. At the same time, I sound very vain. I haven't paid any attention to my face in years. I just sort of like sprung into action
Mhm.
after menopause. I kind of was like, okay, I need to like sort this out. But and then I did another. So they were doing these facial massages, and people were telling me I was looking really well because it just felt so good. Like you're got your finger inside your mouth and you're massaging, and
Mhm.
so I've sort of set that aside because now I'm doing this very short, like 5 minutes a day of HIIT. And it's a woman on Instagram that her name escapes me. She's got a really cool red mullet. And so I'm
Mhm.
just sort of, because I started thinking, oh, like if you could lift these muscles up, because when you look at the skeleton, I don't know. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah.
I've looked into that too, and I mean, my neck is kind of, I'm always, yeah, like I actually have the red light therapy mask. I don't know if you've,
No, I've
uh,
got a red light too. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
but
getting a
I
bit
don't
like
use it.
yeah, it's a bit like an Amazon warehouse in my house.
Yeah, it's like, but the problem is you got to keep it charged. I can't, I can't get it together enough. It's only like 10 minutes. So that, our face is the same thing. Like the red light helps increase nitric oxide, which gives us good blood flow. And that's
So
what
that's what's
estrogen,
going on.
yeah.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the retinol and all that helps decrease inflammation, oxidative stress, and keeping out of the sun. And but nitric oxide, there's actually Nathan Bryan has nitric oxide. It's pretty expensive on your face. Like I've thought of trying it, but the red light is kind of the same thing. It's just, and that's what sauna does too. Like it increase, the heat shock proteins increases nitric oxide. And
Yeah.
um so yeah, the face stuff, I've been wanting to find someone really good to, like I still don't have someone like to do facials for me and all that, like on a regular basis.
While I was doing
So,
these facials with this Russian woman who came here, she started to annoy me for some other reasons. And also she put up the price like a lot. It was already expensive. But she was doing a lot of this stuff, like,
yeah.
and my face was definitely changing from those. But so I was sort of looking for something, and something fast, because my old way of thinking about exercise and everything is like you've got to just do it and do it now. Like
Mhm.
I came from the Stairmaster time, I would do like 90 minutes on the
Oh
Stairmaster. So
yeah.
that's been a lot of unraveling. And now I'm trying to do like squats here and climb the stairs there and go for a walk here and jump on my trampoline and like, do weights, but don't worry about. So it's a lot, it's incredibly time consuming doing this stuff, but it's also neat because I'd way rather do 5 minutes a day of that kind of thing. And once you get good at it, I've been doing it in my car, like on the way to work as well. So
Mhm.
we'll see. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense that
Yeah,
the
you have
muscles
muscles.
are
Yeah.
pulled, right? Like in that, even the osteopath talks about the tense muscles here, and there was some
Mhm.
how this is all pulling down, and then it's pulling your neck, and it's like it's not really just gravity. I mean, and if you exercise your body is firmer. So why wouldn't your face be firmer, right? Like,
Yeah, and then there's also now too, like you were saying this, like your airway muscles and your tongue, like so sleep apnea, a lot of times it's from your tongue rolling back because your tongue gets weaker.
yeah.
Um, and that's why like women are at higher risk for, and men as we get older, sleep apnea. So like there's tongue exercises. We can spend our whole day just like, and then
I
like
could
this
I could spend from
breathing.
morning till night on just like getting myself organized. Yeah, and I don't know what would happen. I mean, I have the red light too, though, and that red light, like, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of
Yeah,
research
there's a
behind
lot
that,
of
and
good stuff for skin and everything. Yeah,
you
it's really
feel.
amazing to me how when I started hearing about all this stuff, like on these when I first started researching, I'd be like, wow. And I'd look at the research and there's actually not a ton of studies, but like a lot of promising, there's just no one is doing the studies. Like there's no incentive for, especially like the breathing. Now they're finally getting with this inspiratory muscle strength training. Like that research is starting to build, but the breathing exercise is just slowing your breathing. One of the problems is they don't have it like a good placebo. So a lot of
Yeah.
times the placebo is still breathing, they're just breathing more, but it's like sometimes that benefits you. Same with acupuncture, the sham acupuncture is actually can be beneficial. So unlike drug research where they just give you like a sugar pill, like we don't have a really good placebo for some of these, you know, really good harmless, the very low risk, like breathing, it's like it's very low risk,
Well,
to
not to get too metaphysical about it or whatever you would call it, but years ago I was writing about homeopathy on the news desk here in Abu Dhabi, and there was this like gruff guy from Washington Post, and he said, "Oh, it's just a placebo effect." And
mm.
I just said, "Well, isn't the placebo effect a good thing?" Like I couldn't think of anything to say back to him, but it was like hit me in the moment. I was like, "The placebo effect is the power of your mind to believe that you're doing something is going to have an
Mhm.
effect." And I've heard that I can't back this up, but I have heard the placebo effect is rising and it's a concern for drug companies. I would love to research that, but I'm sure it's been a concern always. And so the premise of all of that I find kind of suspect, right? Like if your
Mhm.
mind can believe that something will help you, and I've read that they even tell people this is a placebo and then they will still get the placebo effect. So sometimes when you ask that question and think about that too much, it sort of makes your head hurt about clinical research. It
Yeah.
makes for me like
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends if it's like a treatment, especially if it has side effects, you wanna kinda know, does it work? Like, I think, yeah, most of our studies are they work really well with drugs, but not some of these other areas. I could get into nutrition research, but I won't, but it's
no,
really
that's a big one.
it bothers me when they do these studies where they just give everyone 2,000, IU vitamin D. They only test a third of the people for vitamin D. They don't even give it to people that are deficient in vitamin D. And
Mm,
then at the end of the study, they're like, vitamin D doesn't work, and
right.
but it's like you didn't test. And at the end, I think that's what's that trial? I don't know, the big trial that they did with 2,000 IU, and not everyone had, right? 2,000 IU is not enough for everyone. It depends on your size, and so like, we already have, and then people get sun, they get vitamin D from the sun, so they can't control for that, and then they'll let them have at least 600 IU from a multi, the people in the placebo, and it's like these
Yeah.
studies are not well designed, and
No.
then so then we still don't have recommendations to check for vitamin D, and like it's really crazy. I think that there's so much research that we need to make sure we're getting enough vitamin D. Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
but
It
we
seems
just
like
don't have
they
the research is just not done well. And a lot of researchers have come out and say when it comes to these nutrition studies, we need to design them a little differently. Like, because we
yeah.
already have it in us. It's not like a drug where, you
Yeah.
don't have that, but we already have vitamin D in us. So just taking it is not, you have to know what those person's levels are and.
Yeah, and the current parameters, it's very easy to discount the research on the new, like, you know what I mean? Like, it seems like
Mhm.
it's easy for the sort of establishment to pick apart a study on red light because perhaps it's done in a way that, right? Like, I
Yeah,
don't know. I
yeah.
just think, and one thing I was interested in is lately, just the sort of number of nonprofits and outside of like government sort of funded research that are cropping up dealing with especially longevity and aging. Like I was listening to the All In podcast. They had the guys who started Stripe that do the payments,
Mhm.
and they have funded this whole arm. I think it's called Arc Innovation. They're doing crazy stuff and they're funding it themselves. And there's the Buck Institute, and that is also funded. I believe Nicole Shanahan's involved in that, but I don't think that she's involved in the longevity arm, I believe. And then I just covered it in my newsletter this week. the University of Chicago Medicine paired up with a university in Melbourne and another place in the UK with funding from a nonprofit. They surveyed 600 people, doctors and women, asked them their top menopause concerns, and identified 10 priorities. And now they're going to research it. And, the US government's still figuring out when to have a planning meeting by the end of 2025 to set priorities. And it's just so interesting, like how outside of those traditional parameters, they can just get things done faster. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a huge, research is just a huge issue. I think we had some comments.
Yeah. Can you read them? I took my glasses off.
I find studies all the time on menstrual cycle, and half women are on birth control, which totally skew it. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and in general, sometimes these researchers aren't super knowledgeable about the subject. Like with iron, I can tell with some of these studies that they don't always understand iron metabolism. And I'm not saying I know everything about iron metabolism, but I've done, a lot of research on it. So yeah, they should always maybe get a specialist if they're not, in this area that they're researching. I don't know. But
well, I mean, just even the number of studies I look at that don't seem to separate out synthetic and bioidentical hormones still in the last couple of years. I mean, that's just
yeah, and they never separate out exercise or anything. So it's just a big population of people, and some take hormone therapy, and it's well, why don't we look at the different lifestyle factors and see, how that plays into, the whole living 7 years longer that we hear. It's in that one study, that's what that study showed, but hasn't been replicated, when people talk about this research, and it just,
yeah, it's a slow incremental process, and it has to, and then there's reporting on it by people who don't really understand it, and I include myself in that, and I include myself throughout my career in that, right? I didn't always understand. I read a line the other day that said, there have been limited observational studies that hormone therapy has an anti-aging effect, but that still has to be confirmed. More research is needed to confirm this. That was the line I read. And I was like, what? How do you know what it's going to confirm? It's it's limited, it's basically the begin. And you don't know if those studies you don't know anything about them. Were they funded by skincare? Were they funded by a hormone therapy company that sells, estriol for your face? You just don't know.
Yeah, I like when the companies donate their product. I think that's what the Beat It. They've been in so many studies, and they just donate their product, and they, so that's good, versus designing the study, or you know what I mean, but if they can donate, that saves a lot of money, you know what I mean, and then they can find out, these companies should find out how their product works, but
I also it's so tough because whatever you do that someone can pick apart, right? If you're a company and you want to get research, I get it. You go ahead and do your own limited studies, and then you present that. And then someone's going to come along and say, because for them to donate it, they still have to find the people to do it, and the funding has to come from somewhere. And it's just a big mess sometimes. Actually, all the time.
For sure.
Anyway. Okay. Well, it's always nice to talk to you. Sorry I was late.
Yeah. No problem.
Is this a good time, do you think?
I think so. Yeah. 7-ish. Is everyone else? Is that a good time? Yeah. Well, for me, and then everyone's got 7. You're about getting ready for bed.
Yeah. It's not the morning show here, but it's okay. It might be when I come back to North America.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's always so good to talk to you. I'm going to go do this.
Too. Let me know how it goes.
I'm going to expand my lungs and strengthen my, Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Maryann.
Thanks.